in Vegas, talking with those on the right, the left, and everywhere in between. It's Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro.
I hate everything about this Brian Shapiro guy.
This show will make you laugh, make you cry, and it might raise Brian's blood pressure.
You know what, dude? People like you, all you do is make excuses for the orange turd, and I've had it.
Buckle up, because it's Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro.
You're different. I like you.
Now, here's Brian.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a great weekend out there. It's good to be back, pushing the limits. Thank you for joining us on the Occupy Democrats Network. Of course, KSHP, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, you name it, we're there. And, of course, the website, pushingthelimits.live. Thank you so much for joining us. So, a lot to get to today. A lot has happened over the weekend. Of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing that he's out of the presidential race officially, and he is endorsing Donald Trump. We're going to give you more coverage on that because it's mesmerizing to me, because you had so many people on the right, including Donald Trump, by the way, and we're calling Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a communist, and now all of a sudden he's a patriot. Again, the word hypocrisy on the far right, I say it a lot on this show, so we're going to be going over that. We're going to be talking about that. Carmine Sabia, right-wing pundit on social media, has a very large platform. He's going to be joining us here in a few minutes. I want to talk about the hypocrisy, about how these people on the far right, they call people on the left communists and pedophiles, but then the second they endorse Donald Trump, they're heroes, right? Just like the heroes Donald Trump says, those that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. I think the term that he used was patriots and hostages. So we're going to talk about that with Carmine here coming up in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I do want to show you a picture that Donald Trump had a photo op this morning. This picture, and I'll show it here and you can see it. This picture is a picture of Donald Trump taking a photo op at a cemetery. 6 feet underneath him, dead bodies. And he's holding up his thumb, a thumbs up, and nothing else says more about someone's character, I think, when you decide to take a photo op at a cemetery. That speaks empathy, right? This is who Donald Trump is. It doesn't matter whether it's at a cemetery. Doesn't matter if you're holding a Bible upside down in front of a church where those who own the church don't want you there. It doesn't matter where it is. That's the way these people on the far right think today, though, because they think, go to the border for a photo op, like as if that's going to change anything. How bizarre. And how despicable and how disgusting that you would take a thumbs up in a political photo op at a cemetery. This is who Donald Trump is. And while all this is going on and Donald Trump is taking photo ops and doing a thumbs up at cemeteries, he's also trying to back out of the September 10th debate. Now, we heard before the CNN debate with Joe Biden, we heard it from basically everybody on the far right that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash were going to be unfair. They were going to treat Donald Trump unfairly. He shouldn't do the debate on CNN, right? We heard it on the far right from everywhere. Then all of a sudden, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, I have a lot of respect for Jake Tapper. Dana Bash, They did a very fair, moderated debate. Did you hear any retractions from Donald Trump? Did you hear any retractions from those on the far right? Oh, I was wrong about Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. They did a fair job. We're hearing the same thing with ABC now. Because this is what they do. All they do is they whine, they bitch, and they complain. But it gets worse than that. Not only is he trying to back out of the debate on September 10th, but he wants the microphones to stay on. Why? Explain to me why any political candidate that's debating somebody else a few feet away from them wouldn't want the microphones turned off when you're not supposed to talk. Well, folks, there's only one reason: so that he can interrupt, so that he can try to overpower her. Now, it shouldn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. It shouldn't matter whether you're a MAGA supporter or you're a Kamala Harris supporter. It shouldn't matter. I think anybody that is a reasonable human being would say the microphone should be turned off when you're not supposed to talk. That's for both sides. Now, I'm not worried about Harris interrupting because she's not an idiot. She's not rude. She's not obnoxious. He has a history of doing this with women in debates. Do you remember, besides that first Joe Biden debate 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, when he interrupted literally Joe Biden's every other word, and it was an embarrassment? Remember when he was hovering over Hillary Clinton, stalkishly walking behind her as she was talking? This is who Donald Trump is, and this is what he wants to do. But the right doesn't have a problem with this, because anything that Donald Trump says, anything that Donald Trump does, they curl themselves into a pretzel. No, the microphones, and that, by the way, this should be for any debate. Any debate. The microphone should be turned off when it's not your time to speak. You want to give each person equal time. That goes for Harris as well. Again, I'm not worried about Harris interrupting because she's not rude and she's not obnoxious. What Donald Trump wants to do to Kamala Harris is exactly what he did to Joe Biden in that first debate, if you remember, over 4 years ago, when Donald Trump literally would not let Joe Biden get a sentence out. That's not a debate. It's a disservice to the American people. If Donald Trump disagrees with something Harris says, he'll have time to respond. That's how debates work, and vice versa. That's the only reason why he wants the mic on. Now, obviously, the Harris camp shouldn't agree to this, and this might be a chance for Donald Trump to use an excuse and to say, I'm not doing the debate. And I have a feeling that could happen. I don't think it will happen, but it could happen. And again, we're hearing the same excuses from Donald Trump with ABC that we heard about CNN. The exact same excuses. They're not going to be fair. They're fake news. They're going to treat me unfairly. We're getting that exact same thing. Now, all I try to do is seek the truth on this show. All I try to do is separate right from wrong. If people want to have policy debates with me, have at it. We're not going to agree on everything. That's fine. Let's talk about it. That's what debate should be about. We're going to get his take and your take. That's what we want. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Carmine Sabia via phone. Carmine's going to be calling in. And I'm going to ask him about this stuff. I'm going to ask him about Trump trying to get out of this debate. I'm going to ask him about RFK Jr., his thoughts on that and more. It's going to be a good spirited debate, I'm sure. It always is with Carmine. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back after this with Carmine Sabia. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP. All right, everybody. Welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. Programming note tomorrow, we're going to have somebody from the Trump campaign, a surrogate, for lack of a better term, joining us tomorrow. Also, an actor from the very famous movie Mallrats will be joining us. Mr. London will be joining us, and he has a grandson who has special needs, and he took it very personal, the attacks from the far right on Governor Walz's son. So we'll be talking to him tomorrow as well in a jam-packed show. But joining me right now on the line, we always get into good-spirited debates. He is a right-wing pundit conservative, Christian, and a very staunch Donald Trump supporter, popular on social media. Carmine Sabia joining us right now on the line. Carmine, I do appreciate you being here as always, my friend. How are you?
Always fun, Brian. I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing okay, my friend. I got a little R&R over the weekend, so I'm feeling a little more relaxed today than normal. I was very annoyed at Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Friday, but I want to ask you about that. You know, a lot of people on the far right, including Trump surrogates and Donald Trump, have not only criticized this man just in the last few months, but they've called him a communist. And isn't it amazing that they can just flip the switch and now all of a sudden he's a patriot? Can you help me understand that?
Absolutely. I also was critical of him. I didn't call him a communist. I said he was very liberal. He still is very liberal. There's no doubt about that. I'm not taking that back. But it's actually very simple. It's the same reason that Democrats will embrace the sudden changes to policy that Harris has had her entire career till about 15 minutes ago, which is it's politics. It's a numbers game. And when, do I think nationally, I don't think the polls really moved much. But if you take even 1% and you change those votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, if you move even 1%, that could be the presidency.
I don't disagree.
So
I don't disagree with what you just said. No, Carmen, I don't disagree. I understand that. But let me touch on what you just said and give you a pullback on something. I think it's different when you evolve as a human being and you change a position on a policy, whether you agree or disagree. I think Kamala's changed her position on a few policies. I think they're for the better now. But I think there's a fine line between changing your position on a policy and then comparing somebody to Adolf Hitler, like J.D. Vance has, and then flipping the switch, or calling somebody a communist and then flipping the switch. Don't you think there's a little bit of a difference there between changing a position on a policy and comparing somebody to Hitler and then saying, "Oh, I'll stick with this guy now"?
Well, sure, there are differences, and then I'll tell you, what I would argue is, again, you know how the game works, right? Do I believe that Kamala Harris has really suddenly evolved in 15 minutes on everything she's ever believed? Of course I don't.
But that's not true.
I understand why she's doing it. It's smart business. And when you're running a general election campaign as opposed to a primary, every single election, every single candidate, right and left, is much more liberal or conservative in the primary, and then they get to the general and they move to the center. Happens every election, every candidate. But when you're talking about, let's say, J.D. Vance, for example, comparing somebody to Hitler, now Trump, who he did not really know, he made that comment in 2015 before he watched the man govern, and that's a big caveat. When you're talking about Kamala Harris, who watched Joe Biden govern for decades and essentially called him a racist.
No, she didn't say that. That's not true.
Oh, no, it was just essentially. I didn't say she called him. I said essentially.
She didn't call him a racist.
She cast aspersions that he had racist tendencies, and she was the girl on that bus that he didn't want coming to his kid's school.
It was about policy. She never said he had racist tendencies. I just want to set the record straight, but go ahead.
But it was strongly implied. I think it was strongly implied. And then she became his vice president because that's politics.
She never called him Hitler. She never said that he was a racist. I think those are two completely different things. She didn't like the way his policy was in certain situations, and she eloquently pointed that out on a debate stage. I think there's a far line difference, the analogy you're trying to make, between disagreeing with someone on a policy position and saying somebody is the next Adolf Hitler or a communist, Carmine.
Yeah, but I could say anything about you and then watch you govern for 4 years and change my mind. So I think that's perfectly reasonable.
But I wouldn't pick you.
That's
fine, but I wouldn't pick you as my vice president if you compared me to somebody who murdered 7 million Jews.
What? But, okay, I understand what you're saying, and then that was maybe a bad choice of words. But if somebody says, this is what I thought he was going to be, and then I watched the guy and I liked how he governed, and I realized I was wrong, about what I assumed about him.
But this is a guy who
And now
doesn't
I'm
admit
on
he's
board
wrong
with
about.
him.
This is a guy who doesn't admit he's wrong about anything. J.D. Vance.
Well,
He doesn't admit he's wrong about.
He's admitted he was wrong about Trump. He admitted
Well,
that.
what's he going to say? I still believe he's the next Adolf Hitler. Of course, he has to say that. But when he's asked about the cat lady comments, when he's asked about a number of different things he said, he doesn't own it. He doesn't say, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. You know what he uses? The same excuse that Donald Trump used when he talked about injecting yourself with bleach. You know what? I was just joking. It's the biggest cop-out in the world, Carmine. Can you give me that at least? You know what? I was just being sarcastic. No. Own what you said and say, I shouldn't have said that. I chose my words poorly. He can't even do that.
But let's look at every fact-checking site that exists, and they all will tell you Trump did not say you should inject yourself with bleach. Look at Snopes. Look at PolitiFact. Look at
I
any
know
of these
exactly
places.
what he said, and he talked about disinfectant, how it could possibly cure COVID. And you know what he said the next day? Because he knew he effed up. You know what he said the next day? As everybody in the media was mocking him, rightfully so, I was just joking. No, he wasn't, Carmine. That's a lie. He wasn't joking. He wasn't smiling. Nobody in the room was smiling. And even if that was the case, by the way, Carmine, which it's
I
not.
smiled.
Okay, but even if that was the case, at a minimum, beyond inappropriate to make jokes about disinfectant when we're losing 3,000 people a day to COVID. It's not an excuse.
But you talk about, and this is where I get confused, because you talk about people that don't admit they're wrong. Can you point to some examples of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris saying, I was wrong about X, Y, Z?
Absolutely. In 1 second, Joe Biden, when he said, you ain't voting for me if you're not black, he took blowback. And not only did he say it was wrong, but he actually apologized, something that Donald Trump has never done. Even when he talked about grabbing women by the genitals. He immediately said, yeah, I could have chose my words better. And then he said, I don't even know if that's me on the tape. And he walked it back. Donald Trump doesn't smile. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't own up to anything. But let's go back to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., if I may. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a man, for the most part, that has been a Democrat for most of his life. He calls, we agree on that. He calls, or at least someone in his campaign, and I have some pretty good sources that tell me that the Washington Post article is 150% accurate. And by the way, he says he personally didn't ask for a position, which, by the way, I don't believe him, but somebody in his campaign did. You go to the Harris campaign first. Hey, we'll support you if you give us a cabinet position. They tell him basically to screw off. And then he goes back to the Trump administration. How can you respect somebody like that, Carmine?
I don't believe that story's true, and I'll tell you why. When it was reported that he was looking for a position in the Trump campaign for his endorsement, that was about a week before the Harris campaign story came out. Robert F. Kennedy did not deny it, did not say anything. When that story hit the Washington Post the very next morning, he released a tweet deriding Harris, saying he would never support her under any circumstances, and he was vehemently against her. So I don't believe that story. It's the same Washington Post, that said, first of all, that is absolutely, I think we can agree, very left-leaning. Got the story on Hunter Biden's laptop wrong. They got the story on the Russian PP tape wrong. They got all kinds of stuff wrong.
And Hunter Biden has taken them to court. Why, if it's not true, why doesn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. threaten legal action?
Well, Hunter Biden taking them to court for what?
Hunter Biden is taking media entities. It's already been proven. He's taken media entities. He's taken them to court. He plans on filing suits against multiple entities for putting out disinformation about what was on his laptop. All I'm simply saying is, why hasn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. threatened legal action if it's a blatant lie, which I disagree with you on respectfully? It's not. I don't believe it is a lie, because I think all along Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was only out for himself. He was only out for himself to try to get a position in a cabinet, whether there was an R or a D next to that person's name. And I think that is self-serving. And sadly, there's a lot of politicians in D.C., on both sides, that are self-serving. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is no more than a self-serving nut. That's what I think.
I disagree. I think Robert Kennedy has put his career on the line for years, talking about things that are very unpopular, coming out against the vaccines and things like that, where I think it would have hurt him with the Democrats. I think there was no chance he could have been in a Harris administration with some of the things he said. But with some of the things he said, he absolutely fits in a Trump administration, because there are a lot of people, not Trump himself, but a lot of people on the right who feel the same way about vaccines.
Conspiracy theories. It was a bioweapon. It was targeted towards a certain group of people. Yeah, I agree with you.
Let me ask you a question, though. Let me ask you a question. Do you know for a fact that it wasn't a Chinese bioweapon that escaped that lab by accident?
Here's the thing. We don't know, and neither does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And for him to make those sorts of speculations with a huge platform, he's also floated around conspiracy theories, and I don't want to get into the vaccines with you because we're both not doctors, but he's thrown out conspiracy theories about it causing certain diseases in children. He's been wrong about that. This is a guy who thinks that vaccines are bad for you. And when he's challenged on these issues, he walks back some of his statements. He's not a doctor. He's sued the pharmaceuticals. That doesn't make you an infectious disease expert. And this man is, in my opinion, absolutely responsible for deaths of children in Samoans in other countries. And you could look this up if you don't believe me. He has been a conspiracy theorist, at least for the last decade, says things that are completely absurd as far as I'm concerned. He also agreed to committing a felony on this show. He said he gave his kids fake vaccine cards, which in most states is a felony. And I've been to his rallies, Carmine, and a lot of the people and this is why I'm concerned, because I'll give you this. I agree with you on this. His endorsement of Trump does mean something. It is important. Because these are Trump supporters. These are not Harris supporters. Many of these people are conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers, and they believe the nonsense that he spews. And if the guy kills a bear and then stages a bear murder in Central Park, they laugh at it. They think it's funny.
But let me ask you, I don't think that's funny at all, by the way.
Good.
As an animal lover, that actually...
it's weird. It's very strange.
That really bothered me. But let's talk about, so... You got Jesse Ventura. Now, Jesse Ventura gave an endorsement to Kamala Harris. Jesse Ventura believes 9/11 was an inside job. He believes that HAARP creates weather weapons. Mm-hmm. He had a show literally called Conspiracy Theory.
Right. Here's the difference. Someone that says that 9/11 was an inside job is not going to kill people for having that opinion. Saying that the vaccines are all bad and they kill people has killed people. That's the difference. Now, I don't agree with Jesse Ventura that 9/11 was an inside job. But you see, some of the conspiracy theories that Jesse Ventura has talked about can't kill millions of people. And let's just be real about this. The guy who says that the vaccines are more harmful than good to people is teamed up with a guy who is a part of Operation Warp Speed. It makes absolutely no sense. And Kennedy has talked about this. In fact, I got the tweets. He's tweeted about it. He said he'd never be on a Trump ticket because he basically disagrees with Trump on almost everything policy-wise. It's insane. He said it, Carmine.
And then I believe you. I would like to see what Jesse Ventura said, and I'll check to see what Jesse Ventura might have said about the vaccines. I can almost guarantee you that Jesse Ventura was against the vaccines. I could almost guarantee it.
Yeah, but so what? Yeah, but so what? The point I'm trying to make is both of these guys, Kennedy and Jesse Ventura, they're not infectious disease doctors. Why is it that so many people on the right, immediately, they're transgender experts, they're psychologists, they're infectious disease experts, they're apparently experts on election integrity? Why is that, Carmine? All of a sudden, these guys have PhDs and they're all infectious disease experts. It's insane.
And yeah, here it is. Jesse Ventura was a vaccine skeptic.
Okay, so what's your point?
So it's the same thing. He was saying the same things, actually, that what I'm looking at, that RFK was saying about vaccines. And he's endorsed Kamala Harris, and I think people accepted that endorsement, and we're thrilled to get that endorsement.
If you can find me comments that Kamala Harris made on social media calling Jesse Ventura a communist and a sicko, then I'll be with you and I'll give her that same criticism. She has not. From my recollection, she's never even said anything about Jesse Ventura. Donald Trump, for the last year, has done nothing but attack Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm going to play you audio from Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity doing segments, calling him a communist, and then Sean Hannity, being the moron that he is, goes on his Fox News show and then says he's a patriot. Sean Hannity did 20-minute segments. I'm going to play them on the show later, calling him a communist and attacking him. And now all of a sudden he's a patriot. These people are fake, Carmine. They're phony. All these people.
Well, I mean, listen, everybody in politics is to a point, right? By the way, Senator Whitehouse says that Kamala Harris will support packing the Supreme Court.
Okay, well, if it means getting Roe versus Wade back to where we had it for 50 years, then I'd be okay with that. By the way, Sean Hannity called RFK Jr., quote, a monster on his TV show. A monster, a communist.
Wait, hold on. You're to get Roe versus Wade back. You're in favor of destroying the court because you know that, let's say Kamala Harris were elected president, God forbid, and she packed the court, and then the next person elected was a Republican, they would then pack the court, and then the Democrat would come in and they would pack the court more. Eventually, we'd have 100 Supreme Court justices.
Well, here's what I would say to
that.
Here's what I would say to that. You have someone on the Supreme Court, multiple people. You have a guy by the name of Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court who should not be there. He's accepted I'll tell you why. He's accepted millions and millions and millions of dollars from some of his Republican donor friends. He has been bribed. And you have another guy in the Supreme Court, Alito, who...
I don't believe he's been bribed. He's accepting gifts.
Okay, yeah, millions and millions of dollars in gifts. I'm sure it has nothing to do with him being on the Supreme Court. And then you have Justice Alito, who has that flag upside down and then does what so many of these right-wingers do, blame their wives, just like Ted Cruz did when he went to Cancun. He blamed his family because they're both cowards, Carmine.
Before you get into this, though, have any laws been broken? Have they not? Why are they not impeached, these men?
I'm going to tell you right now, if Clarence Thomas, and I mean this wholeheartedly, and this is what I believe, if Clarence Thomas was your typical no-name judge that nobody had really heard of, and he accepted millions and millions of dollars from these right-wing donors, he would be out of that chair. But because Clarence Thomas and so many on the right defend him, and he is on the Supreme Court and such a high-profile figure, it's why they haven't gone after him. It's almost impossible. He is on the Supreme Court, and it's very, very difficult.
Has he broken a law?
Yeah, I believe he did. He accepted bribes.
What law did he break?
I believe he accepted bribes. He's been compromised.
You believe that?
Yeah.
Okay, so he took money from people who brought cases to him,
and he didn't report it.
That's what you're saying. He took money from people,
and he didn't report it.
Had cases in front of him,
and he didn't report it. He didn't report it. I didn't say he had cases in front of him at the time, but in the future, these people, and this has been proven, that have given him millions and millions of dollars in gifts, and you name it, boats. First-class flights, private jets, and all that are people that gained financially from his policy decisions. And you can go back and you can look at this. All I'm simply saying is that if Clarence Thomas is off the Supreme Court, if Justice Alito is gone, this country is a better place because of it. These two people should not be on the Supreme Court.
I'm sure you believe that.
They should not be on the Supreme Court. They are compromised. They are morons. Clarence Thomas's wife is despicable with her statements about January 6th, and you're telling me that doesn't compromise Clarence Thomas when it came to the January 6th commission? Of course it did. His wife is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and Clarence Thomas is compromised. Okay. But John...
It's an interesting... So we're responsible, right? We take issue with things that people in our family do. Let me ask you a question. Is Kamala Harris possibly, and is this corruption, responsible for her brother-in-law being in charge of the judgment slush fund, where the DOJ was winning cases against liberal groups, and suddenly, when he got into power, he started settling those cases that the DOJ was winning and giving billions of dollars to liberal-aligned groups who then donated to Democrat candidates, okay? Donated to Democrat candidates after they were awarded billions of dollars, and career Justice Department people were furious and on record furious that he gave into these judgments on cases they were winning. And Kamala Harris, as Attorney General of California, signed off on some of those judgments that her state was involved in. Is she responsible?
Okay, so and by the way,
is that corruption?
I'll respond to that, but let me start out by saying this, because I'll answer any question you ask me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Now, I will look into that and see if what you're telling me is true. I have no idea what you're talking about. What I would say to that is this. What we had on January 6th we know of is over 1,000 people that broke the law. Some of those people attacked police officers. 140 officers went to the hospital. And while all that stuff was going on, we have text messages from not Clarence Thomas's sister-in-law or brother-in-law, from his wife, texting actual people underneath Donald Trump, including Mr. Meadows, who is now flipped and is going to be testifying against Donald Trump if we ever see it in court, but they keep delaying it. And that is a fine line difference, even if true, what you just brought me up. Let me repeat that. Clarence Thomas's wife.
In the New York Post, Tony West is his name. Married to her brother, married to her sister, Megan.
Even if that is true, okay, there's a fine line difference between what you are explaining to me allegedly her brother-in-law, and Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, his wife, texting people underneath Trump, including Mark Meadows. We're talking about the day of January 6th. One, in my opinion, is criminal activity, and the other one is not. This is the wife of a Supreme Court Justice, and Clarence Thomas voted on the January 6th Commission and other entities that could have gotten us more information because he's compromised. That's, to me, that's a far fine line compared to anything that you have brought up. And this is another thing, man, and I have to bring this up with you because this frustrates me.
But Kamala Harris signed off on these herself.
Okay, so
she signed off on some of these settlements.
And you disagree with it? You disagree with the settlements?
So did career Justice Department officials disagree with it.
So you're comparing
even
a financial...
The New York Times called it a runaway train driven by racial politics.
Okay, well, that's a subjective opinion. Again, that's an opinion on that. So you're disagreeing with a financial settlement, and I'm trying to talk about physical crimes and violence that took place by right-wing terrorists on January 6th. Do you not see a difference there? I mean, you're trying to compare apples to oranges, in my personal opinion.
Well, you're talking about two totally different things. I'm talking about something that actually, January 6th seems to be the only riot you guys are against. I'm against it too, but I'm against all riots.
When did I say I wasn't against? When did I say I wasn't against all riots?
I'm talking about as a group. I saw a lot of liberals, including Kamala Harris, who promoted a bail fund for people who were rioting over George Floyd.
Not true. She created
mortified about what happened in January 6th.
Again, not true. She did not create a bail fund for those that committed
violent acts. I said promoted. I said promoted a bail fund.
And she did not promote those who committed violent acts. What she did promote are those who committed misdemeanors, those who maybe were there when they shouldn't have been there and couldn't afford legal representation. There is a fine line between...
I didn't see her make that distinction in her tweet.
Okay, well, you can look it up. You can look it up actually what that organization did.
I've read that tweet many times.
And look up, and look up, forget about the tweet for a moment, look up where that money went to. It didn't go to people who physically assaulted police officers. It went to people that were not convicted, or I should say indicted on violent crimes. So it
went to people who went on and committed murders. It reminds me of the Willie Horton.
I mean,
I think they should Willie Horton this.
If you could name me one person that she promoted in getting money that committed a violent crime like murder, then please let me know, because I'm very unaware of that. But I want to go back to something else, because there are some people on the right, even some people that I consider friends of mine, that make fellatio jokes about Kamala Harris. I see the memes on social media. She slept her way to the top. There's a local radio host in Las Vegas who actually has spoken at some of Donald Trump's events here, that again puts out a tweet and makes jokes, fellatio jokes about her, sleeping her way to the top. Will you publicly on this show denounce people on the far right that make sexual innuendos and fellatio jokes about Kamala Harris? Will you do that now? Will you call that out and say it's wrong?
I will not. Because I prove to me it's not true. I mean, how did she get her start in politics, man?
How did she get her start in politics? So you're saying that her law degree and years of her being a prosecutor, and she only got to where she is today because of performing fellatio, Carmine? Is that what you're claiming now on this show?
I am not claiming that. I'm saying, can you prove that didn't play a part? The fact that she was in a relationship.
I'm not the one making that claim. You guys are the one. You guys are the ones that have to prove it. I'm not making that claim. You are. And here's what we know. Donald Trump slept with a porn star just weeks after his wife had a child. We know that Donald Trump has multiple ex-wives. If there's anybody that's done the cheating and done the lying, and
that didn't help him in politics, did it?
Oh, really? The $120,000 payment he made to Stormy Daniels to shut her up, that didn't help him get elected? Give me a break. You're going to make
because I don't think a single Trump voter would have gave a damn about that. I'd be honest with you.
Then why? Well, Donald Trump disagrees with you because he paid her $120,000 in a hush money payment. But let me go back to this, because I think you're better than this. and I'm shocked to hear you say this. You're okay because she's a woman and allegedly, because we don't even know if she had an affair, allegedly decades ago might have allegedly had an affair with somebody, that's why she was the vice president, and that's why she's up for president now, and that's why she was a senator, and that's why she was a prosecutor and duly elected twice in San Francisco, because she might have, and you don't have direct evidence of this, just a man that's claiming it, might have had an affair. And you're okay with those fellatio jokes about her. You don't think
I listen. I think that she had plenty of time to deny it. She never has.
Why would she even want to talk
it.
about something like that? You should have to deny all the crazy conspiracy theories that guys like you put
let's talk
forward.
about conspiracy theories. When the person who you had the affair with is actually saying we had the affair, yeah, you might want to deny that.
Doesn't mean it happened.
Trump had to deny a ridiculous pee-pee tape accusation that had no basis in fact anywhere.
I never said he became president of the United States because of a PP tape. You are making a claim, even if it is true. You are making a claim that because Kamala Harris might have had an affair decades ago, and you're condoning misogynistic, sexual innuendos, and fellatio jokes about a woman who is a married woman with kids, a happily married woman, and you're okay with the sexual innuendos and attacks on her, not with policy, just sexual jokes about her because she might have had an affair decades ago. Carmine, I want you to listen to what you're saying. You're better than this.
I think we shouldn't be so sensitive as to be that dismayed by a joke. I've made the lowbrow joke about it myself. I did it on this program, in fact.
And I thought it was wrong.
And I regret it. I regret it because it's not something I wouldn't do it again. And it's not something that I really, I was trying to more trigger you.
Carmine, I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you saying that. I do. But what what bothers me is that you can't just say, you know what, let's all stick to policy. Those comments are inappropriate and they're below the belt.
We should. I think we should stick to policy. They are below the belt. They are inappropriate. I'm not a fan of it. I pray Trump doesn't do them, and he hasn't.
Why can't you just say it's wrong and don't do it? Why is that so hard?
It is wrong. It is wrong. But Trump can't be responsible for what everybody in his party does. I saw somebody make a joke.
I didn't say that
I saw somebody make a joke about Kamala Harris's daughter or stepdaughter. I thought that was wrong. I hope you point out tomorrow when you're talking about the MAGA people or the far right people who made fun of Tim Walz's son. I hope you point out that most of them deleted those tweets where they found that he was special needs.
Doesn't matter.
They were wrong,
Doesn't
even
matter.
if they were wrong.
Doesn't matter.
Were wrong even if he wasn't special needs. Don't get me wrong.
I agree with you. But here's the difference.
But we should also point out tweets like mine that went viral, denouncing those people and telling them they should be ashamed of themselves.
And I'm glad,
a MAGA. I'm on the far right.
And I'm glad
point those out.
And I'm glad you're stating the obvious, but I find it problematic when I ask you what I think is a very simple question. You don't hear me talking about Barron Trump and mocking him. I think it's a very simple question when I say, will you call out on the air and say it's wrong, these sexual innuendos and these fellatio jokes about Harris? And your first response is, no, I won't call it out. I think that's wrong.
I think it's an unfair game, right? Let me say everything bad, right, that anybody on the far right said, and then I'll get somebody on the show who's far right or who is a MAGA, and then say, will you denounce this? Will you denounce that? Will you denounce this? Will you denounce that? And it'd be like me having you on my show and saying, right, here's all the crazy, crappy things that people on the left have said.
And I guarantee you I wouldn't defend it. And I guarantee you I would call it out if it rose to that level.
I think at a certain point you would say, come on, man, that's not what this is about.
No, we're not
this
talking
about Kamala Harris didn't say it.
We're talking about prominent people like yourself and other Republicans that have made sexual innuendos and inappropriate jokes, and you knew you were wrong, and I appreciate you for saying, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. Why is it so hard for Trump supporters to just call out bad behavior and say, you know what, generally speaking, we shouldn't be making sexual jokes. We shouldn't be talking about her race. We shouldn't be talking about her gender. Why is it so hard? Why can't you guys just stick to policy, man? I don't understand it. Just call it out. It's wrong. We shouldn't do that. Who cares if she allegedly had an affair decades ago? We're going to talk about, you want to compare her life to Donald Trump, a man who's got 5 kids with 3 different women, a man who's cheated on every single woman he's ever had, a man who has 30 plus women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, a man who is a proven liable rapist in a courtroom. And we're going to talk about an alleged affair that Harris had decades ago. It makes you guys look really bad. I would say go ahead and keep doing it, because it makes you guys look bad and you're not doing a good job.
Listen, I would agree. I think there's nothing to gain from it at all in any measure, except making women angry, who are very important in this election. So I would strongly advise against it, even just for those selfish purposes.
Right.
So that being said, yeah, I would absolutely say that is not politically a wise or astute decision. But even in that, again, it is just wrong. You shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do it. And it's also politically stupid. So,
that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to hear. I agree with you. We shouldn't do it, and it's stupid, politically stupid. Yeah, I agree. It is.
But when it comes to what we were talking about with RFK, I think that we have to be very careful what we say, because a lot of us go back in politics. Politics is a very hypocritical business, and politics make strange bedfellows, right? How often do you see enemies take each other's side? And you know what I'm saying? And I'll steal from Patricia Heaton, who wrote this. Anyone who attacks the spouses or children of candidates is a loser. Have some decency.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, and we both agree on the attacks on Waltz's son. I like having, I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, Dave, who does this show a lot. He does a right-wing show, and we had a conversation about policy of substance. And every single time Donald Trump speaks, the guy who you support, every single time he speaks, he calls Harris dumb. The personal attacks on, they're communists, they're this, she's stupid, she's dumb. First of all, let's just clear that up now that we've cleared up the sexual innuendo stuff, which I think we come to a consensus on. Harris is not dumb, okay? You can't be dumb and pass the bar, become a prosecutor, duly elected twice in San Francisco, becoming an elected senator, becoming the vice president, and as I hope, the president of the United States. You can disagree with Harris. You guys can disagree with her policies. Fair game. Let's talk about that. But to question her IQ and call her stupid, when you got Donald Trump talking about the electrocution of sharks, he's talking about Hannibal Lecter. He has no understanding of history. He says Jeb Bush got us into the war in Iraq. I mean, come on, man. Come on, man.
First of all, don't degrade the late great Hannibal Lecter, but no, I don't think Kamala Harris is dumb at all. I think, listen, like you said, that's why I think Trump is smart. You don't get to those positions because you're dumb. I think that when interviewed, however, or given a press conference or doing anything off script, she does not come off as smart as she is. And I don't think she's a very astute public speaker, which is weird for a prosecutor.
And you think Trump is? You think Trump is doing a great job public speaking?
Well, I think that Trump to me is a lot, and maybe it's because of my background, Trump to me is a lot like a professional wrestler. He knows
he's fake. I agree.
He knows how to cut a promo and talk to his audience. Kamala Harris, I think, does not know how to do this. Now,
she doesn't know how to public speaker. She doesn't know how to talk to her audience. Did you hear that speech at the DNC? Have you seen any of her rallies in the packed crowds?
I saw it. She said a lot of nothing on that DNC speech. Okay. A lot of nothing.
I disagree. I think there was a lot of
policy. What was the policy agenda she pointed out? But she get specific about policies?
Off the top of my head, I mean, if I looked it up, I could name you 50 things. But off the top of my head, I'll certainly name you a few. When it came to the border bill, if she's elected president, she's going to get people to sit back at the table and put that bill and pass it. She talked about her stance on the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which is, by the way, very similar to Joe Biden's position on that conflict. She also talked about not sucking up to evil, murderous dictators and being tough on Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, not writing them love letters. He talked about taxes.
Did she talk about why she didn't support a border bill like that for the first 3.5 years and waited till an election year? Did she talk about
what she talked
why,
about,
as the president of the Senate, she would insult our closest ally's leader by not being there at the Senate when he was there?
Okay, so
Did she
first
talk
of all,
about why she won't sit down and answer one hard question with a real interviewer?
Hold on. So first of all, I'll answer all of those, but I just gave you some policies and then you moved the goalposts. But that's okay. She did meet with Benjamin Netanyahu. That's number one. She
wasn't in the Senate that day.
Okay.
She was not in the Senate that day.
She wasn't in the Senate that day, but she met privately with Benjamin Netanyahu, which I think is more important than showing up at the Senate in a chair. So that's number one.
As a Jewish man who supports Israel, does it not concern you that she is tepid, that she is afraid to full-throated support Israel without giving some nod to the Palestinians and some nod, in my opinion, to the Hamas terrorists as if they had a point on October 7th?
So first of all, that's despicable to even claim that she's giving the nod to Hamas when everything she's constantly said about Hamas is calling out that terrorist organization. That's number one. Number two, I agree with everything she said. While I agree with the Biden administration and Harris that Israel has the right to defend themselves, I am not a Benjamin Netanyahu fan. And they also have a responsibility for the least amount of casualties. And I don't personally believe that they have done that. There are too many. I know in war, innocent people die. It's horrible. It's a tragedy. And whether it's a young child in Gaza, a Palestinian child, or a young child in Israel, they're both equally as bad. And I agree with the Biden position on that.
But here's the problem. Whose fault is it that Hamas is hiding in civilian buildings, in schools, in hospitals, behind their citizens? Whose fault is that?
Hamas.
Okay, well,
and I can
call that out.
Well,
she shouldn't act like Israel's killing children on purpose.
I never said, and Harris has never said, that Israel is killing children on purpose. She never said that, and I never said that.
So I would ask Harris, what is Israel supposed to do if they're hiding behind civilians and you have to get to them? What is Israel supposed to do?
It is an extremely complex situation. Donald Trump hasn't had all the answers. Joe Biden hasn't had all the answers. They want a ceasefire. And I believe Harris and Joe Biden when she claims that they are doing everything they can to try to get a ceasefire and get the hostages.
Why should there be a ceasefire one day before Hamas says we surrender? Why should there be a ceasefire?
The only way that you're going to save lives is to do whatever you can to get the hostages home and put together some sort of plan.
The hostages are dead, Brian. They're dead.
We don't know that for sure.
They're dead. Come on, man. Don't be naive. They're dead.
That's an assumption, and we don't know that for sure because the Hamas certainly still needs leverage. So I'm not buying that every single hostage is dead. I don't believe that.
No, Hamas needs leverage, but then they should be showing proof of life videos. Haven't seen one. So we can't. By the way, some hostages were released. And there were no videos of many of those hostages. There were a few, but many of those hostages, there were no videos, and their families didn't know if they were alive or dead. But let me ask you this question, Brian. Now we're getting complicated. If we turned around tomorrow and said, all right, if Israel said, if you release every single hostage, we'll have a permanent ceasefire. You know what that creates? That creates a situation where next year, Hamas goes and grabs another 100 Jewish people and holds them hostage.
Here's the thing.
And it says, nah, you can't get us. We got your hostages.
There needs to be a two-state solution. There are people that disagree with that. I agree with Harris when she says that. Benjamin Netanyahu, I don't
disagree with it.
Well, that's fine, but we can disagree on that. But I believe there needs to be a two-state solution. But here's the bottom line again, and we're going to go back to Trump and Kennedy and Harris. Okay, Trumpers out there want to blame Joe Biden for what has taken place in the Middle East. Obviously, Jared Kushner didn't do anything, right, except a couple $2 billion from the Saudis. But the bottom line, Hamas has been around since the mid-'80s. But every MAGA Republican that I speak to, they want to blame Joe Biden for the war in the Middle East. They want to blame Joe Biden for what's taken place in the Ukraine. But they don't want to blame Donald Trump for COVID. They don't want to blame Donald Trump for what was a possible bioweapon, intentional or not, that killed millions of people in this country alone. But that's not Donald Trump's fault, right? $8.4 trillion in debt over 4 years. That's not Donald Trump's fault, right? Crime went way up, violent crime, over Donald Trump. But yet Donald Trump and the Trumpers out there want to say crime went up under the Biden administration. That's a lie. So in one aspect,
liberal cities.
I'm talking about the entire country, okay? So in one aspect, you want to blame Joe Biden for all the problems around the world, including gas prices, which is a joke, by the way, because if you compare this country to the G7 summit countries that we compare our economy to, we're doing much better than those countries, but that's another story.
But let me tell you something, Brian. Here's the bottom line. You know this. You're a smart guy. You know politics. At the end of the day, when those people, the average American voter, who doesn't know all the things that you and I know about inflation and about gas prices, when they go to that voting booth, and they look at their bank account, and they look at what they're paying for groceries, and they look at what they're paying for gas, and they look at what they were paying 4 years ago, they're blaming Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Whether it's right or wrong, what I'm telling you is a fact of life. They're blaming Joe Biden and Kamala, and I would argue to you that they have absolutely played a role in that. When America sneezes, the world catches a cold, and the policies of printing money in this country during COVID was wrong when Trump did it, was wrong when Joe Biden did it. Printing money and giving it away was wrong and caused this inflation.
Okay, question for you.
It's a direct root cause of this inflation.
Question for you. Printing money and giving it away. When Donald Trump had the biggest tax breaks for the top 1% richest people in this country for decades and decades, did you characterize that as printing money and giving it away?
Tax breaks create jobs.
Okay, so it's okay to give the biggest tax breaks for the top 1% because you claim it creates jobs. But on the other side of things, if Joe Biden, like, for example, student loan forgiveness, you guys have a serious problem with that. But when Donald Trump gives literally the biggest tax breaks for the top 1% in decades and decades, that's totally okay. Does that make any sense, Carmine?
Sure, it does make sense. I'll tell you what the difference is. A tax break, let's say to Carmine Sabia, for example. Carmine Sabia works for his money, and his tax break is just allowing him to keep more money that belongs to him that he earned. Whereas a student loan forgiveness, and by the way, I benefited from some student loan forgiveness because my college, one of the colleges I attended, was an absolute fraud. But student loan forgiveness is saying, hey, you entered into a contract, and we're going to say, you know what, as an adult who entered into the contract, forget it. You don't have to take responsibility for the contract you entered into anymore. Now, if they did something with student loans where, because I believe there was predatory lending that went on, if they did something whereas they said, okay, we're going to cap the interest, or we're going to, cut off interest that you have to pay that we think was unfair, I'm all in favor of that. Because student loan forgiveness isn't just that you have to not pay it back, Brian.
So you care about contracts.
Somebody else, the taxpayers, have to pay it for you, and you're not creating a single job. Because you got a liberal arts degree in women's studies. So it's not my fault that you can't find a job.
A lot of economists would beg to differ with you, and they would say that if you give these people student loan debt forgiveness, that they'll have a little extra money to spend in their pocket to keep a lot of small businesses open. I also find it very interesting, the term hypocrisy, which I use a lot. I didn't hear you saying the same thing about all the PPE loans during COVID that so many far-right Republicans seem to take with their small businesses, some that even ran for office right here in Las Vegas. Hold on a second. A guy by the name of Sam Peters, who ran against Stephen Horsford. He was against student loan debt forgiveness, but then when he took his PPE loans, which, by the way, he never paid back, that was totally okay. His reason? Well, I needed to pay my employees. So because you needed to pay your employees, it works for you, but it doesn't work for everybody else. It's a joke. It's hypocrisy.
No, I don't know that. It's not hypocrisy. It's not hypocrisy. I don't know that particular situation. I don't know who that man is, but I will tell you this. If he paid his employees with that money, then he was doing the right thing to keep the economy moving.
He doesn't have to pay it back.
PPE loans were given with the caveat that if you meet certain criteria, you don't have to pay it back. They're honoring the contract they were given by the government.
The guy that I'm talking about is a billionaire. A millionaire. He ran against Stephen Horsford. He's a hypocrite. You can't. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. I hear this from Republicans all the time. The Cheneys.
Who do the student loans people pay with their money? This guy was paying employees. If you get forgiveness for your student loan, who are you paying?
So what if somebody that has a student loan has one employee and they're struggling to make ends meet? It doesn't apply to them. That's hypocrisy, Carmine. The whole point.
So then answer me a question. So then when they took out the student loan, did it say if you do these things, you don't have to pay it back? If you pay these people, you don't have to pay it back? Because they're honoring the contract they were given. The student loan people are not honoring the contract they were given.
I mean, this is the interesting thing about this, because if you're going to talk about contracts and doing the right thing, and this is not whataboutism, I just find that interesting when it comes to Trump University and all the contracts that Donald Trump has broken. and all of a sudden you're a contract guy. Listen, what about helping Americans? What about helping people that are struggling? What about helping the middle class? This is why Republicans lose the popular vote in the presidential elections almost every time. And the
I agree, because if you tell people that we're going to give you free money, you're going to get a lot of votes.
It's not about giving you free money. It's about taking care of people that are struggling and stop giving tax breaks to the top 1% and taking care of your billionaire friends. It's about helping people that are not making $30,000 or $40,000 a year, people that are struggling. And I'll even go to the taxing on tips nonsense, because people like you, Carmine, say, with due respect, that, Harris, she stole that no tax for tips from Trump. No, she didn't. If you actually read no, she didn't. If you read her policy compared to Trump's policy, I'm going to give you a Vegas.
Where can I read her policy? It's on her website.
I'm going to send you her plan when it comes to no tax on tips, but I'm going to give you an example right now, and you can tell me what you think of this. I'm going to pertain to Vegas. Say a stripper is making $300,000 a year just on tips alone. Under Donald Trump, that stripper will not get taxed on any of her tips. Meanwhile, you got a guy across the street working at Walmart making $8 an hour. He will be taxed on his salary. Kamala Harris has a plan, and in her plan, which you can read and you can Google it online, it's based on how much money you make. That stripper making $300,000 a year would still be taxed on her tips. It's not fair in this country to not tax people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but yet tax somebody making $7 or $8 an hour at Walmart. It's absurd, Carmine, and it'll never work.
First of all, I think I've been on this program. I've said it here. I've said it on Twitter. I've said it everywhere you look. I don't care how much money they make. If they make, if they're a waiter making $3 an hour plus, then they make maybe $10 more an hour on tips, and the guy making $8 an hour at Walmart still gets taxed and you don't, that's unfair. I think the no tax on tips policy is a direct pander by both candidates so they can get the Las Vegas vote, because Nevada's an important state, and it's a BS idea. It's a horrible idea, and it's an unfair idea. I believe it for Trump, and I believe it for Harris. I don't care how much the person makes. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that everybody else, unless you're in the service industry or an Uber driver, you get checked. Come on.
So what insane. Trump said in Las Vegas, clearly we agree he was pandering to voters. You would consider that ridiculous, what he said in Las Vegas about the tax on tips. Is that what you're saying?
I consider both of them ridiculous on it.
Okay, well, I think they're very, very different on the issue. I think if you're making, as a waiter, $30,000 a year or whatever a waiter would make, then I would be okay with no tax on tips, so they could make.
Why? If the Walmart guy still has to pay for the same salary,
I would also. And guess what? I'm so glad you brought that up, because when we're talking about taxes and we talk about Kamala Harris, she does not want to raise taxes. In fact, she wants to lower taxes for people that are making that kind of salary, while Donald Trump, again, as I put it, has given the biggest tax breaks for the top 1% in this country. Harris's plan works. It's why when a Democrat leaves office as president, the economy is much better than what it was than they took over. Barack Obama is the perfect example of that. Donald Trump is the perfect example of that. Joe Biden is the perfect example of that. Donald Trump, make no mistake about it, left Joe Biden with a horrible economy when we were also losing thousands of people a day to COVID. Barack Obama took over an economy that was a horrendous economy. Thank you, George W. Bush. Okay. Joe Biden is leaving Kamala Harris, I believe, who will be the next president, a better economy than when it was than Joe Biden took over. Why is that, Carmine? Why did Democrat presidents always leave? Bill Clinton left us with a surplus. Why is it then Republicans run the country? I'm not talking about, as you would say, a liberal city. When a Republican runs the country, they put us into the ground. Hence, Donald Trump, $8.4 trillion in debt. Why is that?
Because they pump up, Democrats tend to pump up the economy with nonsense. Like when Bill Clinton pumped up the economy on people getting home loans who didn't deserve home loans, and then the home market crashed after he was out of office, and then the Republican had to take responsibility for that. They pump it up with BS,
pumped it up,
and then, oh, look how great the economy is.
What do you mean? He left the country in a surplus, and Donald Trump got us $8.4 trillion in debt. What do you mean pump up? If anything, Donald Trump was pumping, it was porn stars. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
I don't understand what porn stars has to do with this.
Well, you use the term.
We're talking about economic policy. Economic policy.
We are. And I'm making a joke.
Democrats put the economy on a sugar high. They always do it.
Okay,
They
so
always put the economy on a sugar high.
even though Democrats like Bill Clinton will leave the country in a surplus, and even though unemployment, the lowest it's been in 50 years, your reasoning for that is, well, they're just pumping it up. I don't
Hey,
understand.
my family made a lot of money with Bill Clinton as president. What he did with the housing market, a lot of money. I'm all for it, but he pumped it up with nonsense, and we knew it was going to crash. We knew it was going to crash when he was doing it.
I guess that's debatable, Carmine. The pumping up stuff. That's a interesting reasoning behind it. But with that being said, I know you probably have better things to do than to yell at me and me yell at you for an hour. But it's been a good spirited debate. I always appreciate.
I always
it.
love it, Brian.
No, it's always
love it.
it's always entertaining. I always said we'd do a good show together one day, and I appreciate.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on, and just come on, no sexual jokes about Kamala. Come on, you're better than that.
I agree. I was wrong, and I won't do it again.
Okay, you can make sexual jokes about me. I get it all the time, and I laugh
I
at it.
will.
That's okay. That's
And I
fair
will.
game. That's fair game. But just come on, leave Kamala out of it. All right, Carmine, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. How can people follow you? Give out that information before I let you go.
Sure, man. It's at Carmine Sabia on Twitter and Facebook. It's at Sabia Carmine. So,
all right, Carmine.
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, I do too. I'm guilty of that as well. Carmine Sabia, always a stand-up guy for coming on. I appreciate your time, my friend. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
God bless you. Take
All
care,
right,
man.
you too, Carmine. That's Carmine Sabia, everybody. A good follow on social media, even though we might disagree with him on some things. All right, I've went way long on that interview. So here's what we're going to do. I have people saying, what's the number to call in? Here we go. I was going to play some audio when we come back, but I'm going to get right to the calls when we come back. Number to call, 702-221-7283. Again, that number, if you want to be a part of the conversation, the right, the left, everywhere in between. That's what we do here. It doesn't matter what your political opinions are. I always welcome phone calls at 702-221-SAVE. Again, that's 702-221-7283. Before we go to break, I want to remind all of you, this is an independently owned radio show. What does that mean? We're kind of like public radio, public TV in the aspect that we rely on people like you. So what can you do to help us out? First thing you can do to help us out is check out the website, which is pushingthelimits.live. Sign up for the free newsletter, look around. It's a great website. We're very proud of it. Pushingthelimits.live. You'll also notice that on the shopping section there's merchandise we sell. We sell mugs, we sell hats, we sell shirts, reasonably priced stuff, and you're supporting what we do. If you don't want to buy merchandise, that's fine. At pushingthelimits.live, on the front page, though, you'll see a donate button. Doesn't matter what you donate. We appreciate anything. $5, $10, $20 a month. We appreciate your support. So pushingthelimits.live. Check us out on there. Merchandise, donate button, and we appreciate all of you very much. We're going to take some phone calls on the other side. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. We'll take a quick break. Your phone call's next. All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits on a Monday. Wow, a lot of comments on social media from that spirited debate with Carmine Sabia. Who won, who lost? Well, I'll let you decide on that one. Of course, I think I won the debate, but we'll let you guys decide on that one. I want to thank my great sponsor, Jackson's Bar and Grill, the official gaming bar of Pushing the Limits, located on Flamingo and Jones. Great promotions this month, including if you hit a jackpot, a taxable jackpot, everybody in the bar that's actively playing with a card in a machine will win $20 in free play within 24 hours. Please check them out. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. Programming note for you. I'm really excited to have this guy on the show because I've been a fan of his for a long time. He's a great actor. He's got, I would say Mallrats is a cult classic. I think it's fair to say with Ben Affleck. He starred in Mallrats. He's been in like literally hundreds of movies. But I wanted to have Jeremy London, actor, director, join us tomorrow because he put out a video on social media the other day that went viral because he has a grandson that suffers from special needs. And he was very upset, as I was, with the attacks on Tim Waltz's son, who's a special needs 17-year-old teenager. So Jeremy London's going to be joining us tomorrow. We're going to get a Trump surrogate on tomorrow to talk about RFK Jr. and all the people on the far right, including those in his campaign, Trump's campaign, that have called RFK Jr. a communist, among other things. Another story that some people are excited about. I'm not. I could care less about Tulsi Gabbard, who used to fill in for Tucker Carlson, by the way, who endorsed Donald Trump. Does anybody really care who Tulsi Gabbard supports? Who cares? Number to call, 702-221-7283 is the number to call. All right, let's start off with Ron. Ron is first up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Ron. Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm surprised I got through.
Sometimes it's not
I
easy.
listened to your... No, it's not easy. I got through the first time. That's great.
Good.
Well, I've been listening to you for a while now.
Thank you.
I
appreciate
really love your show.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Where are you calling from?
Just a couple of... I'm calling from Calistoga in Napa Valley.
Oh, okay, cool. Not too far from Vegas. What's on your mind today?
Well, listening, you got a lot of patience, bro. I respect that. I don't know how you keep up with it. I wanted to say a couple of things.
Sure.
One of them was about the court, the number of people on the court. You probably know as well as I do that that's buried over the many, many, many years that it's been in existence from time to time. So that's really a false argument as far as packing the court.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
And the other thing was...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. Make your second point. Feel free. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to also say California Bar is notorious for being the hardest one in the nation to pass. So congratulations, Kamala, for passing
Ron, that's another thing. She failed once and then she passed the second time. If you talk to most attorneys, they'll tell you that is not an abnormal thing. A lot of attorneys fail it once, twice, even 3 times. And it's just like, it's so pathetic, the attacks on her. I'm glad I got Carmine to admit that he was wrong because, to be honest with you, if you notice, it's very hard for me to be speechless. I'm a talker. But I was even speechless when he in a way almost condoned it. And then I got him to maybe turn back on it. But I mean, these attacks and these sexual jokes and the fellatio jokes and stuff on Harris are almost as bad as going after Waltz's son, which I think is even worse. Thank you for the call, Ron. I appreciate you. 702-221-7283. We have one phone line open. Let's go to Joseph. Joseph is next on PTL. What's up, Joseph?
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Okay. Here's my piece. After seeing that photo of Trump at the Arlington Cemetery with a thumbs up, goes to show that Trump is still disrespectful for the military, and that's why he hates the military, because he was, like I say, he was put in the military academy for behavior problems, and that's why he wants to seek revenge on the military, because he was being put there all because of his behavior problem.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And, you know, when I see this picture today, which I showed to you guys and I posted it online, Donald Trump's at a cemetery with his thumb up. Let me tell you something. If somebody in my family took a picture with Donald Trump at a cemetery with one of my family members laid to rest there, I'm not going to say it on the air because I could probably get in trouble. But I think you know where I'm going with that. If I saw Donald Trump with his thumbs up near where one of my loved ones was laid to rest, it is so despicable and so complicit He only cares about himself, and it's even a photo op at a cemetery. It's so despicable. Can you imagine, Joseph, if Joe Biden did that? Now they'll go crazy if he's honoring service members that lost their lives, and for 2 seconds as the president of the United States, he'll take a quick look at his watch. They're up in arms over that. But yet Donald Trump could put his thumb up at a cemetery. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy again. It's unreal. It's unreal, Joseph.
And I also agree with that. And speaking of Trump skipping the debate, that also shows that Trump is still a coward, and that's all because I don't care if Kamala Harris is going to be by herself on a podium on the debate. I say let her bring out everything about Trump, about how he disrespects the country, how he disrespects the disabled and the special needs people. And not to mention, I want to see if J.D. Vance is going to snake his way out of this one, not with Tim Walz around.
I tell you what, I think it's 50-50 if J.D. Vance still remains Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate, Joseph. I got to tell you, poor J.D. Vance. 702-221. No, I don't feel bad for J.D. Vance at all. I'm kidding. 702-221-7283. I feel bad for his couches. Let's go to Vivian next on PTL. What's up, Vivian?
Brian. Carmine needs to be deprogrammed. He is so far up on Trump and that crazy stuff that they talk. It was like no talking to him. You honest to God tried to help this guy. But he just twists and turns and corrected himself and just outright lied. Everybody know that it was right on TV that Trump said that about the bleach. Not only did he say that about the bleach, he turned to the lady and back at her and asked her, wasn't there something they could do, like put a blue light, give you bleach and disinfectant and put a blue light on you and everything like that?
Let me tell you, Vivian, whenever Donald Trump usually, and it's almost pretty much on a daily basis, but when he says something harmful or he lies or says something really stupid, the excuse from the far right is either the liberal media is taking it out of context or he was just joking. They put themselves into a pretzel and curl into a pretzel almost every single time Donald Trump opens his mouth. I mean, it's mesmerizing to me, and they do it on a daily basis. And yes, Carmine is an example of that. When you call her, Kamala Harris stupid, when you go,
that was awful.
It's just he does it almost on a daily basis. He calls her a name. I mean, it's beneath.
I mean, I don't listen to his show, and I would not listen to his show, so he can give out his address and all this information all he wants. I would never, ever listen to someone who is that far out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would, and thank you for the call, Vivian. For people that are saying he is taken out of context, go ahead and call the show and give me an example of anything I've ever done or said on this show that takes Donald Trump out of context. He said he didn't respect John McCain because he tends to respect people who weren't captured. Okay. He talked about Mexicans crossing the border. These Mexicans, they're bad people. They're rapists. And I suppose some of them are good people. He said there are good people on both sides. Sure. 5 minutes later, he denounced white supremacy. But then on a debate stage, when he was asked to denounce the Proud Boys, he told them to stand back and stand by. He lied about David Duke back in the 80s and 90s. He knew who David Duke was. He talked about it on the Larry King Show. And then when all of a sudden he decides to run for president and David Duke endorses him, he says he doesn't know who David Duke is. I don't take things out of context. I don't speak for other people, but go ahead and you call in and you tell me what I've taken out of context, because you can take your little Trump fingers and be a keyboard warrior and lie and misrepresent things that I say. Go ahead and call into the show and give me an example. I can't wait to hear from you. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They won't call in. They won't call in because they don't have an example. 702-221-7283. But there's still good people on both sides. Let's go to Bambi. Bambi's next up on PTL. What's up, Bambi?
Hey, Brian. Are you okay?
I'm doing great. I'm just fired up today, man. We got 2 more months left to go here. We got a couple months left to go here, and then it's going to be the end of MAGA. That's what I think.
I feel the same way, but here's a little question. I wish you would have Carmine on the show because I would love the chance to debate him myself. However, I digress. My question, because they keep bringing up the BLM protest and then January 6th and blah, blah, blah. Isn't it hilarious how the people that did that fire and they were 100% wrong, that automatically goes with the people that were peacefully protesting, but yet the January 6th people, they did nothing wrong. So
you're right.
They're conflating the First Amendment, which of course they don't know anything
and
about.
Bambi,
they don't go past the second.
Bambi, you're 100% correct, and I'm going to give you another fine line difference. There's a lot of differences, by the way, between January 6th protest and the George Floyd Black Lives Matter protest. First of all, and I can't think of one prominent Democrat that's ever condoned violence. So that's important to note, number one.
No,
but here is a fundamental difference. You had a group of people, all sorts of different colors in the crayon box, that were protesting the Black Lives Matter protest. And I'm not talking about the organization. I'm just talking about everyday regular people for equality. They were protesting for equality.
Exactly.
You had people on January 6th that were protesting based on a lie that the election was stolen and that somehow Mike Pence could overturn the outcome of a free and fair election. So you have a group of people that are at a minimum, and I'm being very nice here, extremely ill-informed and cultists, and the overwhelming majority group of people that wanted equality. I went to some of those Black Lives Matter protests because
I did as well.
And while I don't agree with the organization, which is made up of 7 or 8 people, I agree with the message, which was tens of millions of people in this country protesting equality, because we all saw what happened to George Floyd, and it doesn't matter the crime that he committed, tendering fake bills, and it doesn't matter what he did prior. All that matters is the 9 minutes where Derek Chauvin murdered him, and that's why he's in jail and was convicted of murder.
Well, Brian, I need you to do me a big favor.
What's
Other than taking a deep breath, don't let them get you worked up, okay?
Okay.
But I need you to please have Carmine in the studio, because
he doesn't live here.
Next time I call in, I know, but if he could fly to these Trump rallies and do whatever,
I'll tell you what I'll do.
I'll
tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you what I'll try to do. I normally don't do this when I have a guest on the phone, but maybe next time he comes on, we'll take some calls. How about that? Does that work? Is that a fair bargain?
Brian, that would be awesome.
I will do what I can for you. Just promise to check out my website, pushingthelimits.live. That's all I ask of you. Okay?
I actually am on your Facebook too, so I got you.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Bambi. I'll try to do that for you.
All right, you're welcome.
Carmine is a stand-up guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if he would agree to that. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Jeremy. I believe Jeremy is next up on PTL. Hi, Jeremy. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brian, I'm calling from New Hampshire.
Well, thank you. Thank you for calling in, Jeremy. What's on your mind today?
I wanted to go back to kind of something you were talking about earlier, that picture of Trump at Arlington with his thumbs up, and you had some criticism for it. But I guess my question to you is, looking at that photo, it's not like everyone else is having a somber moment and he's there, doing a touchdown dance. Why did you fail to mention that everyone else is smiling and there's a girl next to him doing the horns up?
Sure. So I would also answer that question by saying, when Donald Trump brags about sexual assault, there were people around him that were smiling and laughing about that too. When Donald Trump calls Kamala Harris stupid, he can say the most vile and disgusting things, and some of his supporters will laugh and clap. Donald Trump does and says horrible things on a regular basis. So just because a group of people that are cultist supporters of his will laugh and nod their head with everything he does still doesn't make it right. So in this aspect, specifically here, because you have a group of people that I would imagine are, and I'm assuming this, are big Donald Trump supporters. Right.
I would assume.
Right.
That.
I would assume. Okay. They probably don't have a problem with him putting his thumb up, but just because a group of people don't have a problem with it doesn't mean that it's not wrong, sir. And I say respectfully to you, if Biden did it or Harris did it at a cemetery, I would also be criticizing them. The problem is we have a man with a history that has no, I guess you could say, compassion for other people. He attacks handicapped people. He attacks minorities. He certainly attacks women based on looks. This is a man with a history. So while there always will be a cultist following of his, he can say the worst vile things. Let me tell you something, and you might disagree with me on this, but I'm going to say it anyway, and then you tell me if you disagree. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's the majority of Trump supporters. I'm not even saying it's 50% of Donald Trump supporters, because I don't think it is. But if Donald Trump got on a stage and called Kamala Harris the N-word, there would still be a small group of his supporters that would smile, that would laugh, and that would clap. You wouldn't say that would be right, correct? So that's my point.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, I'm not obviously, I'm not going to be like, oh, everything he does is right. But I think if you're going to hold a microscope up to something, you're going to say, oh, my God, look at what this guy's doing. Look how disrespectful he's doing, giving a thumbs up in front of a grave. But you're going to not talk about the presumptive family around him. Clearly, they're not offended. Clearly, they're not. They don't take it as some crazy insult.
But you're making my point. You're making my point. You're making my point for me.
You're going to say that Trump is disrespectful to the military, whatever, yada yada yada.
Well, he is. He is. I'm not saying that. He is. Okay,
Biden,
hold on.
Biden tweeted, or a staffer tweeted. I'm sorry, a staffer probably tweeted.
A staffer tweeted what?
Yeah, his staffer, or from the Joe Biden account, they tweeted about those 13 service members.
Yeah, what about it? What about it?
I'm saying you're going to call the one guy disrespectful. Yet
what did Joe Biden's staffer do that was disrespectful in a tweet?
I'm not saying it was.
Okay, so why are you bringing it up then? I'm confused.
But I'm saying if your claim is that Trump is disrespectful to the military.
I'm not. Okay, hold on. Let's backtrack, because this is a good conversation, and I'm glad to have it with you. I don't believe I'm saying that he's disrespectful to the military. When you say you don't respect somebody because they were captured, he's being disrespectful to the military. I believe General Milley, when he says Donald Trump called them suckers and losers. This is also a guy who dodged the military multiple times. So I'm not sure I would characterize it as me disrespecting the military when he gives an award to one of his biggest donors, and he says that award is better than an award that these brave servicemen and women get if they're injured or they're dead. So I just gave you a couple of examples. I don't think that's me saying it's disrespectful. I think it's the overwhelming majority of America that would say it's disrespectful.
I don't know if it's the overwhelming majority, because that losers and suckers comment was originally dropped anonymously, and it took about a year and a half for General Mark Milley, who has some implicit biases.
Okay, so you think General Milley was lying? Okay, all right, no problem. So you think General Milley was lying? Let's move on then. What do you think about saying you don't respect John McCain because he was captured? Would you say that's disrespectful?
I don't really know the context of that, but I guess if John McCain was going to take a personal attack at Trump during the campaign, I don't understand why people still think that, we're going to be nice to people who are insulting us.
First of all, I didn't say Donald Trump had to be nice to him, and I'm going to tell you again verbatim what he said. John McCain was captured.
I know what he said.
Okay, well, you just said you don't know the context of it, and I feel like that's an excuse. You absolutely know the context of it. He was bashing John McCain and his military service, and your response to it is, well, John McCain might have gotten personal with him. Why can't you just say it's wrong and it's disrespectful? Why is that?
No, I agree.
You sound like a decent man.
Brian.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Something my father never said. No,
but I mean that. You seem like a smart, decent man. Well, we probably agree more than we disagree. And you're saying, well, look, the family around Donald Trump with this thumbs up, they didn't seem to have a problem with it. They might not have a problem with it, but that doesn't mean it's not wrong, right? There's always going to be a percentage of Trump supporters where he could say the most horrid, disgusting things. She's not black. She turned black. Example, there are plenty of MAGA Republicans that don't have a problem with those personal attacks on her race. That doesn't mean it makes it right. That's what I'm trying to say, my friend.
No, I agree. I agree. But I just think it's kind of naive to think, and then this kind of go into your comment, what you said, I think you're referring to that hot mic or someone secretly recording Trump where he said he called Kamala the B word. And, if someone were to be a fly on the wall in the White House, I bet they'd call him a lot of different words. So I just think it's crazy to clutch our pearls like, oh, my God, he called her this name. He called her that. I can't believe he said that.
So you're in a way, you're making excuses for it because you're saying a hypothetical that I'm sure Joe Biden has worse things to say. But here's my response to that. When you are in public and you have a huge platform, and by the way, when you're on a golf course and there are people videoing you, we're not talking about in a private room in the White House, which, by the way, I still wouldn't condone that type of language. But we're talking about in public, where Donald Trump feels most comfortable, whether it be Mar-a-Lago or around his rich friends, and he knows that people are videoing the conversation, and he talks like that. It is beneath the presidency. It's beneath the hold of office in any office. It's wrong, man. It's wrong.
I think you're being a little naive. I think think it's crazy. These people may be politicians, but they're still human.
Okay, but
I
not
don't
every,
know
not,
the extent of
I, with all due respect, I think you're being naive. Not every politician is a liable sexual abuser that has 30 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape. And not every politician is a felon. And not every politician has been caught on tape or not even said something like grab them by the P word. Let me tell you something. I played 2 college Division I sports. I was on college scholarship. I've been in locker rooms my whole life. I've heard some guys say some pretty piggish things. I've never heard a dude talk like that before. Grab them by the P word. So with all due respect, we'll have to end it there. But I think, and I appreciate the conversation, by the way. That's why I kept you on for a while. It's a good conversation. But with all due respect, I think you're being a little naive. And you're a smart guy. I can tell. You know better. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Mark. Mark is next up on PTL. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Brian. Carmine sucked the air out of the room again. I don't get it, Brian. You're really a smart guy, and if Carmine had just called in and you didn't know this guy from heads to tails and the things he had said, you would call him a maggot. I'm sure of it. But I want to get to something a little more important.
Okay.
Now, all right, I'm going to tell you how you were wrong with Jake Tapper. What he did over the weekend was abominable. But I also want to mention real quick that Trump is launching a new attack on how Kamala Harris fumbled the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Let's get this straight. Donald Trump gave the order of withdrawal
right
a few weeks before he left office.
That is true. John
and
Bolton. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to add something real quick. John Bolton has confirmed that Donald Trump's policy with the withdrawal in Afghanistan was virtually identical to Joe Biden's. I just want to be clear on that. John Bolton has confirmed that.
Correct. And Biden did not get a briefing prior to getting into the White House to take over. So he didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And Trump is responsible, yet he's launching an attack.
Well, of course.
But here's what Jake Tapper did. Listen to this. Over the weekend, Jake Tapper attacked Cory Booker, who was on his show, and stated, I don't understand you guys. Now, he called Democrats you guys, right? I don't understand you guys. You had the presidency for the last 12 out of 16 years, and Kamala wants to change the chapter. What chapter? What chapter does she want to change when she owns this for the last 12 years? These are the attacks that Jake Tapper had stated over the weekend to Cory. And Cory stated, well, if we didn't have the blockage that the Republicans did, everything from gun violence to the border and on and on and on,
well, I'll say
things
this.
would have been better.
I appreciate the call. I'll say this about Jake Tapper. I've always had respect for him as a journalist. I was very disappointed with the last interview he did with J.D. Vance. There was no fact checking. There was no pushback. And, in some interviews, they're told not to fact check. But I think that's what's always made Jake Tapper really good at what he does is the fact checking. And, I think some of his best work is interviewing Jim Jordan live on CNN. And when he doesn't do that, he's just like any other, dry run of the mill anchor. So I agree with you. I've been very disappointed in Jake Tapper. Who's next? 702-221-7283. Let's go to Roy. Roy is next. What's up, Roy?
Hey, Brian. How you doing?
Good.
First off, I think Carmine's an idiot. And I think he's a prime example of when Donald Trump says he loves the uneducated or the dumb. Mm-hmm. But I just want to go back a step. Nobody seems to really remember that his poor response to the pandemic had a big impact on the inflation that followed, along with his tax cut.
Yep.
And one other thing that most people, I'm an accountant and a financial guy. At the very last minute, he took that high tax rate of 39.6 for the top rated and reduced it to 37. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but for the guy who's making $40 million a year, that's $1 million tax saving.
Right.
He also took away the personal exemptions for people. So if you had 2, 3, 4 kids, you lost out on all those personal exemptions. Mm-hmm. They also increased the floor on the interest deduction. They limited the taxes.
Right.
So if you're in some of these higher tax states, you were limited to $10,000, even if you were paying $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 between real estate tax and income tax.
I agree with everything. You just said, and it is also interesting that the attacks from the far right, when it comes to the Biden administration, They just throw things at a wall and they hope it sticks. For example, the crime was way up under Joe Biden. It's a blatant lie. Violent crime was way down under Joe Biden.
Yes,
it went
it
up
was down
under Donald Trump. And then when you compare, these people don't even know how a basic economy is run. They think the president sets the price of gas. But then when you look at the economies of the countries, Roy, that we compare ourselves to, the G7 summit countries that we compare our economy to, we're doing much better than most of those other countries. So instead of giving credit to the Biden administration, they want to talk about how expensive their eggs are and how expensive gas. Okay, well, give me the policies that you think caused that. Is Joe Biden responsible for inflation all over the world? They can't form a sentence and base an argument. They listen to their OAN and Newsmax because many of them are brainwashed, and they throw things at a wall and they hope it sticks, and they don't even know how the economy works. They think that drag queens are more of a threat to our children than guns. How do you have a conversation with these people? Thank you for the call, Roy. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Paul. Paul is next up on PTL. Hey, Paul, what's going on, man?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the reality. Carmine I love that you interviewed different points of view, but the reality is that Carmine is supporting a rapist and a guy that molested a 13-year-old Katie Johnson on Epstein Island. So he can talk about taxes and tax breaks and policy all he wants, but he's selling his morals for good policy.
Agree.
That rolls into, I think, the day that you were, and that's fine. And I'm glad that you talked to Carmine. I'm glad that he thinks it's funny. It's disgusting. Here's the bigger thing, right? It's the way that we treat women and the way that the media is treating Trump. They're going back to the 2016 BS. Oh, what's your policy? This is just me, Brian. I don't give a crap what his tax plan is. I don't care what his policy is on foreign affairs. He's a convicted criminal.
Thank you.
I agree. He raped a woman, period.
Yep.
I don't know why that CNN is playing this stupid game again where they're trying to get Republicans. They don't want to hear it.
Look at who owns.
Missing here. Why
look at who owns CNN.
Than that?
Look at who owns CNN. Look at the ownership of CNN, and I think that's the reason why CNN has changed quite a bit in just the last 6 months of their coverage.
Yeah.
I thought their coverage of the RNC was disgusting. But on a side note, what do you think about this, Paul? Every Republican that spoke at the DNC convention, not one of them was broadcasted on Fox News. It could have been Jeff Duncan. It could have been Stephanie Grisham. Yep. It could have been Adam Kinzinger. Not one Republican. They made that a point to not play a Republican speaking at the DNC. Whereas CNN, I'll give them credit. They played everything, right? Yeah. RNC and DNC. They're still better than those networks, that's for sure. But, it's interesting too because at the RNC, Paul, this, the economy is number one in everybody's mind, right? The number two topic for the most part in every poll is abortion. Not one speaker at the RNC. I'm not exaggerating. You guys can look this up and fact check me. Not one speaker even brought up abortion. Not one. I find that very interesting, Paul.
I also, one thing I think is very underrated is the way that people in this country are treating women, and I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. Why is it when Trump rapes a woman, he gets their vote? Why is it when he cheats on his wife with a porn star or abuses Katie Johnson, he's a stud? But 400 years ago, Kamala Harris allegedly sleeps with Willie Brown, and she's a slut and she's not qualified for office. Tell me why that's okay.
It's so despicable, Paul. And it's
disgusting.
I talk about this all the time. It is gross. It's horrible. And I hope Donald Trump brings it up in a debate. I hope he does because there's so much artillery, and it's so disgusting. But think about it, Paul. It's not just the sexual innuendos and the jokes, which I will go after these Republicans every day for doing that. But it is also the fact that these Republicans, some of them, thank God, not all of them, not Carmine, attacked Tim Walz's son, who is special needs, and they call him Tampon Tim. There are local radio hosts here in Las Vegas. If you want to even,
you mean the people that duct tape tampons on the ear are making fun of him for putting tampons in the bathroom? Those people?
Yeah, those people, and they don't even understand the policy. So you're right, Paul. It's so ridiculous. It's funny, but here's something interesting, Paul. Here's an important note to this. Right, when it comes to abortion, they're totally okay with allowing Donald Trump to, quote, leave it up to the states to not allow a woman to get an abortion in some states without exception. They tried to do that in Arizona, but that's okay. Yeah. But when Tim Walz signs something where he just allows schools where if they want to put tampons in a boys' restroom, which, by the way, not one of the schools did it. That's also important to note. But he just gave them the power to make their own decision. That's way off limits, and they call him a weirdo and a pedophile and you name it, because that's what these far-right Republicans do. They'll just call you a pedophile or a communist. That's what they do. That's their go-to. When Donald Trump literally was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, he just flew his own jet 2 weeks ago. Could have picked any jet to fly. He decided to choose to pick Jeffrey Epstein's jet. He's been on the flight log 7 times when Epstein was alive. But somehow they're the pedophiles and they're the communists.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I agree. It's insane. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't know if you watch podcasts, but listen to Ultra Season 2, and I don't know if you're a big Maddow fan. The person that first started this right-wing insulting people, lying, was Senator Joe McCarthy back in the 1950s. He was the original right-wing nutjob MAGA that lied, insulted people, and in fact, he insulted one of the senators so much he threatened to bring his son up before the Senate and embarrass him, and he took his own life because he didn't want his son to be embarrassed and being testified. That's how bad. But again, misogyny. He was sleeping around. They went to the Capitol with boxes. They went to the Capitol with guns. It was the MAGA 1.0 before MAGA was what it has today. That's where it all started, was with Senator McCarthy.
Sure, no doubt about it. I'm with you, my friend, and I appreciate the call, Paul. And I think it's only going to start to go away if Donald Trump loses in November. People ask me every day, when is this MAGA stuff going to end? Well, when Donald Trump, either one of two things. Either, he loses his life. I don't want anything bad to happen to Donald Trump. I don't wish that to happen. But if his life is over, or if he loses in November, I believe if he loses in November, I think the start of MAGA will be the end of MAGA. That's what I feel like, and we'll see what happens. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Peter. I believe we have Peter next on PTL. Hi, Peter. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Alton, Illinois.
Well, thank you for calling, my friend. How far is that from Chicago?
300 miles. I'm 30 miles from St. Louis.
Okay, cool. I've been to St. Louis. Great city. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was corporate ownership and how they own our economy. Corporations can get people hired, get people fired on a whim.
Sure.
And they now own our government.
Well,
and I think we need to get money out of politics, period.
I agree. I think that goes for both sides. I think special interest groups are taking control. I agree with you. I think the NRA is a good example. I don't know if you'd agree with me on that, but
yes.
You hear from these Republicans that are running for office all the time, right? They brag, Peter, about their A+ rating from the NRA, and it's really sick because I consider the NRA a terrorist group. I really do. I really do.
I do as well, sir.
Yeah, it's sad.
Posted on my Facebook today. They're crazy people.
Mm-hmm. They really are, and I think when you care more about staying in power and an A+ rating from a group that I would consider a terrorist group, I don't hear any solutions. It's interesting because Republicans will say, "Oh, Harris, I haven't heard anything policy-wise. She talked about her foreign affairs issues when it comes to Israel. She's talked about gun control. She's talked about abortion. She's talked about a number of issues in that speech." I never hear Republicans with any solutions to all the gun violence in this country, except for more guns and let's arm our kindergarten teachers. But they want to say that Democrats and Harris isn't providing policies. I think she's been pretty clear on her take on the violence, like on healthcare, on Obamacare. She's been very clear on how she feels about the Middle East there and Ukraine. She's been very clear. I ask Republicans, what policy are you not clear about? She's been very clear on how she feels on just about every issue. Fracking, she's even talked about that now. She's evolved on different issues, and I think for the better.
How do you feel about conspiracy theories?
Which one? There's a lot of them out there.
It would be mine, actually. Okay. I just think they're putting on a show. I think the corporations are putting on a show to keep us entertained. That's why Republicans can switch from minute to minute, from decision to decision. They don't have to stand behind anything. Sure. They don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And if you hear the news, they're always at 50%.
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think there's a lot of evidence to prove that what you just said is very true. I consider a conspiracy theory, saying that January 6th was an inside job, the Vivek Ramaswamis of the world, or Donald Trump, not even a conspiracy theory, a lie, saying that the election was stolen. So what you just said, I don't consider that a conspiracy theory at all. I really don't.
Well, thank you very much,
Yeah.
because I live in Southern Illinois, which is a fairly red area.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I wish you luck there, pal. It doesn't sound like that would be a lot of fun for me. But go put out that Kamala Harris sign loud in your front yard. I would put out a sign that says "You Trump supporters are all deplorables," and just get them really upset. But anyway,
I got plenty of trees.
All right, good. Well, I appreciate you calling in, Peter, out there in Illinois. I appreciate the call, my friend. Thank you very much. I don't think that's a conspiracy theory at all. 702-221-7283. We have Courtney next on PTL. Hi, Courtney. What's going on?
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Oh, I just wanted to say that I feel like there's going to be no bottom. That whole Willie Brown thing was ridiculous. He had already been separated 10 years when she was dating him.
Right.
And secondly, I don't know if you saw today, they filed something in court claiming that Kamala can't run because her parents were born here. So
Absurd.
basically, they're using the Dred Scott decision that said that slaves were not citizens.
So ridiculous. I mean, we saw Donald Trump start this way before he got into politics, where the birther issue when it came to Barack Obama. Why is it they seem to go after people that are black? Why is it that they go after people of color and they use these types of issues? I mean, it's so absurd.
Because his mother was not born here either.
Right, exactly.
She came over from Scotland like 3 years before he was born.
Correct.
I don't know how that's going to work for them.
Don't even get me started with Melania Trump, who I think is just an utterly despicable human being. Don't even get me started with her.
And his first wife and her parents, all of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's
are
just
immigrants.
It's just so despicable, the attacks. And I remember that phony Melania Trump when she wore that stupid jacket. Or what did it say? I don't care. Do you? Making it about herself. She is so despicable. She's just as bad as Donald Trump. She cared more about the rugs in the White House than she cared about innocent people dying. Innocent people dying on January 6th. Don't even get me started. It's so despicable. It really is. The hypocrisy. I try to talk about it every day on this show. The hypocrisy and so many stark differences between the right and the left. Doesn't mean I agree with everything the Democrats put forth as far as policy goes, but you cannot convince me otherwise that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are not decent human beings, because they are. They come from good families. They're good, honorable people who have worked honest jobs for a living. Donald Trump was given a $500 million company from his dad. He's been born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And how many companies have filed for bankruptcy, whether it be the Trump pizza or the Trump beer or the Trump water or Trump University? It's a joke. And people want to say, well, I want a businessman in office. Oh, really? What about a businessman that's failed, that has burned his father's money? The only reason why Donald Trump has money today is because all the dummies that have the deplorables that have donated to his campaign. That's the only reason why he has money.
Yep. So thank you. I just wanted to say how deplorable it is, though, that they're using Dred Scott of all things.
I'm not surprised.
Slave law.
As they get, let me tell you something, young lady. When they the more and more as we go towards November, the attacks are going to get more and more nasty if they haven't already. The sexual jokes are going to continue. The attacks on her race are going to continue. The fact she's a woman, these people are going to continue these jokes. And I'm not even talking about water cooler talk, people that that you work with, or some people that you might know. I'm talking about prominent Republicans. The personal attacks are going to continue on a daily basis. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. 702-221-SAVE. I believe Maureen is next on PTL. Hi, Maureen. Where are you calling from?
Hi, Brian. Thank you for doing your show.
Sure.
My girlfriend introduced me to your show.
Oh, good.
She wanted me to call in to ask this question because she's working.
Oh, good.
She has, I'm a New Yorker who's been in Virginia for many years, and I live in Trump country. We even have a Trump store here. But anyway, I wanted to ask a question for her.
Yep.
She has a friend who's Syrian, and she lives in Ohio, and a lot of her Muslim community is very mad that the DNC did not have a Palestinian speaker. And she wanted to see what you would say to that.
Okay.
And I'm not going to vote for Kamala now.
Do me a huge favor. Repeat that one more time because your phone was a little muttered there. Go ahead. One more time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have a friend who has a Syrian friend who lives in Ohio.
Yep.
Who said that her Muslim community is very upset that there was no Palestinian representative speaking at the DNC.
Okay.
They wouldn't allow them to speak.
Gotcha.
And my girlfriend wanted me to call you because she loves your show. She turned me on to your show and asked that question because she's working right now.
Sure. So I think that's it's a good question, but the way I would answer it is this way. Not every nationality, every person from every nationality across the country was able to speak. Now, you didn't have a representative from Israel speaking, but you did have a family member who had an Israeli son, family members who were, I believe, captured by Hamas. I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that was an intentional thing. If there's a prominent person of Palestinian descent, that's a politician, that's an elected official, I would have no problem with them speaking. But I don't think that was an intentional thing. I'll tell you people that I would not want to speak. Ilhan Omar, who I think is despicable. Rashida Tlaib, who I think is despicable. They are pro-Hamas. They can say they're against Hamas. They're pro-Hamas. I think it's important to hear the voice of those that are Palestinians. It's just very hard for me to have a conversation with a Palestinian person who believes that Israel should cease to exist and celebrates Hamas. It's very difficult for me to have any type of decent, normal conversation. And sadly, there are a lot of Palestinian people, not all of them, but there are a lot of Palestinian people that fail to call out Hamas and believe that Israel should cease to exist. How can you have a rational conversation with somebody like that? I know I can't. So, I mean, I wouldn't want somebody like that speaking. And sadly, a lot of the people outside the DNC that were protesting are exactly those people. They defend Hamas. Some of them celebrate Hamas. And they are not willing to call out Hamas, like the Rashida Tlaibs of the world. And they don't believe Israel should exist. So, I don't know. That's just me. I know there's something called freedom of speech. I won't give those people the time of the day because, quite frankly, those people, and I'm not talking about every Palestinian person, I'm talking about those people specifically, are anti-Semitic bigots is what they are. And, do you hear Israelis chanting out death to Palestine? Do you hear Israelis saying that they don't think Palestinians, they should cease to exist? No, you don't. Now, Hamas should cease to exist. But I think that's a very defining difference between so many, not all of them, but so many Palestinians and so many Israelis. I just don't hear Israelis saying that Gaza or Palestine should cease to exist. But you hear the chants from these Palestinians outside of these Democrat rallies all the time. And I just think that's despicable. That's the best way I can answer that.
All right. Well, that's what she wanted me to ask you.
All right.
She doesn't know what to say to her friend.
Well, well, you tell her to say that. The first question should be, do you defend Hamas? If they say no, the conversation needs to continue. If they say yes, conversation over. You need to call out Hamas. That's number one. Number two, do you think Israel should cease to exist? We're not talking about a two-state solution. We're not talking about criticisms of the Israeli government because those are fair conversations to have. Number two is, do you think Israel should cease to exist? If the answer is yes, they should cease to exist, conversation over. I'm not going to talk to those people because they're anti-Semitic. Now, if you could answer those questions as yes, Israel should exist, two-state solution, but yes, they should exist, and let's call out Hamas for being a terrorist group, then continue the conversation. But if they can't answer those two questions honestly, then I'm not going to waste my time with somebody like that. I'm sorry, I'm just not. 702-221-7283 is the number to call, by the way, if you want to be a part of the conversation. Excuse me. I want to thank Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones, the official gaming bar of the Pushing the Limits radio program. Great promotions they've got this month, including if you're actively playing a machine with your card in the machine and somebody hits a taxable jackpot, you instantly, I shouldn't say instantly, but within 24 hours, you will get $20 in free slot play. Jackson's Bar and Grill, located at Flamingo and Jones. Please check them out, the official gaming bar of the PTL radio show. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow for a lot of different reasons. We are going to have a Trump surrogate, at least we're expected to have a Trump surrogate on the show tomorrow, because we didn't even really get to some of the audio that I will be playing for you. But so, as you know, towards the end of the Democrat National Convention, Tim Walz's family was there. Tim Walz spoke, and Tim's son, Gus, who I think is incredible. He's a special needs teenager, seems like a great kid, loves his dad. His dad loves him right back. He was getting emotional when his dad got up on stage, which I think is awesome. It's a great moment, a special moment. I think any normal person would see that. It would touch your heart. It's a nice moment, right? Well, the attacks from the far right and Coulter and others calling him stupid, calling him bitch boy. We have a right-wing radio host who still, by the way, hasn't been fired in Milwaukee. It's unbelievable. Jay Weber, I believe his name is. So, a guy that I've been a fan of, good actor, been in some cult classics like Mallrats. Actor Jeremy London's going to be joining us. Why? Well, he put out a video. If you haven't already seen it, you better check it out. It's all over social media. He got very emotional, and he was upset. This is a guy who doesn't talk politics very often, but he has a grandson that he helps take care of who is a special needs child. And I don't really want to explain the video because I want you guys to see it for yourself. It's a very emotional video, heartfelt. And Jeremy has agreed to come on the show tomorrow to talk about it. And I think it's important because people with big platforms, doesn't matter who you are, you could be an actor, doesn't matter who you are, politician. It's important for us to call this type of behavior out. It's just flat out wrong. So Jeremy's going to be joining us on the show tomorrow. And I also want to ask somebody from the Trump campaign, and hopefully we'll be getting somebody tomorrow. You guys were calling him a lot of names, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., over the course of the last year or so. Right? You didn't call him a pedophile, but you did call him many other choice words, right? Many other choice words, including a communist. Why all of a sudden is he now a patriot? So hopefully we'll get a Trump surrogate on tomorrow to talk a little bit about that, and I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate all the phone calls. So I get emails from people every day. I get private messages on Twitter. I get messages on my YouTube page, comments, people that reach out to me through email, and I try to respond to as many as I can. And most of the comments I get, the overwhelming majority of them are very positive, and I appreciate all of you very much for being a part of this show, whether you're calling in or not. I know sometimes it's not easy. If you're not in radio, you're not used to public speaking, to call into a radio show. So I think it's very brave of people to do that, even especially the people that disagree with me. So I get emails every day. How could I get more involved in what you're doing? I want to be more involved in your show. Well, here's what you can do to help us. We are a independently owned radio show. It costs money to put this show together every day. So what can you do to help us out? Well, first thing, check out our new website. We're very proud of it. Pushingthelimits.live. Again, that website is pushingthelimits.live. The second thing you can do, besides signing up for the free newsletter and looking around, the second thing you can do is, we have merchandise up there. All sorts of different stuff. Mugs, water bottles, you name it, shirts, beanies, hats, at affordable prices. So look at the shopping section. Now, if you don't want to buy any merchandise, that's cool. Look at the front page of pushingthelimits.live, and there's also a button that you can press there where you can donate. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's whatever you can afford. We appreciate it. $50 or $5 or $20, whatever it is. We appreciate whatever you can do to help us out. Make a monthly payment. It doesn't matter what it is. Buy me a cup of coffee, whatever it is. We appreciate it very much. It's very simple. The whole thing will take a couple minutes, maybe even less than that. And you'll see the donate button right there. And again, that website is pushingthelimits.live. Of course, my socials at PTL Radio Show on X. I'm very, very interactive on there. My Facebook page, my YouTube page at PTL Radio Show, where I put up extra content really on a daily basis there at PTL Radio Show. YouTube, I'm on TikTok. I'm on X. We're everywhere. So we appreciate you being a part of the show. That's why I also put my personal email down there at the bottom so you guys can see that as well. And you could reach out to me personally. And if you do donate to the show, I will personally reach out to you. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it. Tomorrow, actor Jeremy London will be joining us. It's Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.